Our next conversation is the role of modern media in changing attitudes about age, which again is part of this new theme of discussion that we're hoping we cover in this year's Century Summit. I'm going to introduce our moderator, Ramsey Alwin. I've actually been lucky enough to know Ramsey for several years, and when I was looking at her bio, I was sort of struck by a comment where Ramsey said, aging with security, dignity, and purpose is a social justice issue. And she has always wanted to ensure that every older adult has the opportunity to age well. I met Ramsey when she was at AARP, when she was the director of financial resilience thought leadership, and we spent a lot of time talking about retirement readiness, economic inequities, retirement inequities. And from the beginning, from our very first conversation, I was sort of struck by your personal motivation is access, equality, and it's sort of a measure she has taken to her role as the head of NCOA. So I am going to turn it over to Ramsey and the team. Thank you all.
Thank you, Martha. And it's a delight to be with you all. And I've really enjoyed the conversations that have led us to this conversation. I deeply believe aging well should be a right and not a privilege. And we really, when we peel back the layer of why we're not there yet, it's so driven by our own attitudes on aging that then manifest in the policies and the programs and the products and the services. We're all embodying those negative stereotypes on aging that we've been fed. And so it's so appropriate for this session to now talk about the role of modern media in shaping our view on aging, in shaping our attitudes on aging, because our attitudes on aging are shaping everything else about the aging experience. So it's my delight to have a fabulous panel to introduce you to today. We have Lucy with Hearst Publishing, overseeing all the publications at Hearst, an incredible purview of publications looking at various aspects of our lives and lifestyle in America, and can't wait to hear more about the work you've done around more authentic imagery of aging. And Madeline, as the head of the Geena Davis Institute, working to really help shape media and the imagery when it comes to issues, especially at the intersection of age and gender. And then Richard, as the head of women's health and men's health, really bringing a greater understanding of younger audience perspective on these issues, as well as men's perspectives. So really timely conversation. Want to make sure we have opportunity for you to share your questions as well, but we'll just jump right in and start with Lucy. You've had some amazing experiences over the years overseeing various publications, and now you have quite a portfolio. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the topic of aging and how it's changed over the years. Our willingness to talk ourselves about our own experiences, because aging is living, and then also celebrities more open to talking about various aspects of their own aging experience and even becoming activists in their own right, like Pamela Anderson making a commitment to go public without makeup so we can really embrace a more authentic imagery of aging. What do you think's gotten us to this tipping point?
Thank you so much for that, Ramsey. It's really wonderful to be here. I think it's an incredibly interesting time in media for certainly the way older people and older women are represented. And I think it's, you know, it's our world of magazines and media, but it's also, you know, think about the DNC a few months ago, and it's, you know, Nancy Pelosi in her 80s, and it's Hillary in her 70s, and it's Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris in their very early 60s. And, you know, this is consequential stuff. You know, this is a show of global impact and power in, you know, just for these purposes, these four women that, you know, the likes of which we have really not been seeing at all, much at all in, you know, previous political cycles. And that's a big, big deal. But also, as you say, Hollywood. I mean, that's one of our, you know, obviously most closely watched media platforms. And, you know, what Pamela Anderson has done and with her lovely movie is so great. Nicole Kidman, you know, took some big chances with Baby Girl and Demi Moore. And these are all women in their 50s. And, you know, what I'd say about that is, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, how wonderful it is that, you know, the women like this are able to play a huge role in getting a movie made and, you know, producing and all of the rest, but it's also the subject matter. And when I think about like Baby Girl and, you know, and what was the other one I was just thinking about? Oh, the substance. You know, this is not like lachrymose, like, you know, meditations on how hard it is to be old. This is like those movies, as you know, were ferocious. They were a cri de coeur. They were like a take back the night kind of approach to movie making that I found powerful and incredible. And it was so you know, I so commend those actresses for being as you know, brave and as amazing as they were about, you know, the kind of stories we're going to tell now, and you know, the way we're gonna live in this world. But in terms of, you know, the demographics that have been, you know, very useful in terms of you know, broadening our minds about how people and women can be older in this culture, I also have to commend Gen Z. I find, you know, I'm very, very privileged to get to work with a lot of very young women, men and women, but especially women at Hearst magazines. And they've taught me so much. And so just, you know, a quick example is, you know, when I was going through layouts with the team at Cosmopolitan, and we came upon some images that I had never seen before in magazines of our kind, and it was a whole sort of layout about you know, acne and you know, acne scars, and you know, having just had a you know, an outbreak or whatever. And I asked the editors about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, no, this is totally happening now. This is a, you know, take it back. Don't be ashamed. Own your stuff. Own your skin issues. Everyone's posting on Instagram about their, you know, what's happening with their skin, and we want to show that in the magazine." And it was amazing to me, as someone who grew up in the generation of, you know, do everything you can to hide your blemishes lest you not get invited to the party or whatever. And that was really wonderful to me. And it's adjacent, obviously, to the way Gen Z will not tolerate body shaming and fat shaming and all of that stuff. And they're so brave and they're so great. And I think that that's bubbled up a bit to us older women who, like, maybe don't have to feel that we have to hide every little thing and hide what age we are and hide, you know, things that we've done to feel better about ourselves. The fourth thing that I would mention before handing it over is, you know, the incredible way that the glass ceiling has been smashed, at least in my industry. I know it's not the case in all industries, but in the magazine media world, you know, every boardroom I'm in, every, you know, meeting I'm in, I always clock the gender divide, and it's typically 8 women, 4 men, 10 women, 2 men. It's, you know, we have many prominent, strong leaders, women leaders in our company. And what happens with something like that is we all sort of start talking to each other and seeing ourselves in each other, and we have the opportunity together to change the narrative and sort of how we are and how we behave, and in terms of, you know, being leaders and being, you know, women of a certain age. And it reminds me, a very, very quick story of when I just started at the Oprah magazine, which is incredible privilege to be there for a decade. And we were looking at layouts again, and there's a lot of people, must have been 8 or 10 people, and I was standing next to the great Gayle King. And, you know, we're, you know, talking about images, and then she just sort of says, "Guys, I got to tell you, I am just schwitzing, like I can't tell you, like the hot flashes are driving me crazy." She's like, "I was just like, you know, it was just water falling down my face this morning." She takes out a tissue, she starts, you know, dabbing her face. We're all at this point laughing because it was just so funny the way she was being so honest about this thing that up until pretty recently you had to be very furtive about, and you certainly, you know, you wouldn't think it would, you know, score you any points to be talking about your menopause symptoms at work. And it was incredible to me. I hadn't, you know, started my menopause journey yet at that time, but I remember thinking, are we really allowed to talk about this? You know, women in suits working, you know, at a, you know, important place with, you know, lots of, you know, important things to do. It was an incredible gift to me from the great Gayle King. So I think there's some great change happening.
Oh, and what an incredible watershed moment to get real, to get honest, to create a safe space, to have those conversations, and then also be more relatable to your audience because your audience is looking for good information, information that sees them, that hears them, that understands them. And so talk to me just a little bit about how that translates to the
Sure.
content and the images and the narrative of the publications.
Well, again, I was so lucky to be at Oprah for 10 years, and we were scrupulous, as you might imagine, about making sure everybody was represented because it was the nature of our brand. Our gender diversity was great. Our racial diversity was better than anybody's, and our age diversity was a very big deal. So, the way I edited the magazine and the way everybody pitched and what we did was there was always a keen eye on are we serving all our people, and are we getting to that space that's so sort of tender and critical for women who are moving into their 50s and 60s and dealing with all the life changes that happen at that time. Are we serving them? And I think we did, and I'm very proud of it. But now the Oprah brand is in a different iteration, as you may know, and it's Oprah Daily, and it's a digital entity, and I'm incredibly proud of the way they've carried on the tradition of the magazine. And as you probably know, they did a wonderful, as we call them, Life You Want class about menopause, and Oprah was leading the conversation, and Gail was there, and we had some wonderful experts. And I think we all know this is a hot topic now, and I do believe that it started with Oprah, and that she led the charge, and that she was one of the first to say, we're talking about this. I don't know how you all are feeling about it, but I need to talk about it, and I want to hear how you're feeling about it. Very proud of that.
Absolutely. So there are the taboo topics. And then there's the pervasiveness of just ageism and how we've been so socialized that sometimes we can't even see it. Sometimes it's blatant, sometimes it's subtle, but we've been so socialized to the tropes, to the stereotypes. And Madeline, I'm interested in your thoughts and the work of the Institute in terms of looking at how pervasive these negative stereotypes are and how we peel back the layers and how we can better spot it, how we can course correct it.
So we look at the numbers, we look at the data, and this study that I'm just going to share with you was funded by Next 50, and it was called The Right to Be Seen on Screen. And essentially, people 50 plus are effed when it comes to media. And what I mean is frail, frumpy, feeble, and mostly forgotten. And so when you think about the population of 50 plus in the US being 34%, it's less than a quarter across broadcast, streaming, and film. And we looked at 10 years of the most watched, largest grossing, films over a 10-year period. And when I break it down even more, so of that 25%, women 50 plus are only less than 25%. And then when you look at people of color, who are 41% of the US population, under 20%. And when it comes to other, because we look at multiple identities and we have an intersectional lens, when you look at LGBTQIA and disabled, not even 5%, demographically. And then getting back to the forgotten, it's very full of tropes and stereotypes in terms of, somebody, I think it was Karen or someone mentioned it before about they're alone, they're domesticated. There's no romance storyline. You will never see, for the most part, anyone 50 plus across TV, film, or streaming having sex or a romantic storyline. It's very, very rare. And even in terms of working, we don't see women 50 plus in authority roles working. And again, this is across the most popular content that we're consuming. I will say streaming has done much better. Maybe a few percentage points more, except for when it comes to the disability community.
Powerful. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on what's going to change that. How are we going to be able to change that? And Lucy, I'm thinking about your point about who's in the boardroom, who's in the executive office. Is it changing the composition of those that are designing the content, or is it critical mass in terms of audiences demanding more authentic imagery? What are your thoughts?
So we've been able to prove out, us, McKinsey, a lot of people, that the social imperative, we get it. the business imperative. You will make more money. And I'm looking at Amy Bayer, who's a partner and knows this, and Joe as well, but you will make more money. You will sell more stuff. We know that if you take your appropriately placed commercial next to an appropriately placed, piece of content, you will sell more stuff. Inclusion equals income. So with that, and when you look at the numbers which were shared of our population and where it's only going in one direction. And that's, 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus. And the brands and the advertisers and the content creators that pay attention to that are going to reap the benefits of it. I mean, look at a show like Shrinking. That would not have been on the air, 5-10 years ago.
So waking up to the longevity economy, the trillions, as AARP has quantified, the $9 trillion worth of market opportunity there is there. That's the wake up call. And then how does it translate, Richard? I mean, all ages are aging. With our first breath, we're all aging. I'm curious to get your thoughts on how the images of aging across lifespan with younger audiences, with men in particular, are resonating.
So I have this guy on my staff who's 27, and he was complaining last week that he doesn't recover like he used to. And I wanted to throw him out the window. Everybody is aging all the time. And that's a wonderful thing, right? When you compare it to the alternative. So I think something that we've seen with our audience is a keen awareness of that. And this idea that everybody's bodies and minds are changing over time. So what we try to do for everything from the covers of our print magazines to the digital features we put out across both brands is really meet the audience where they are. I think, unfortunately, when they go on things like social media, or if they maybe go to the movies, they see, and I'm just talking about guys here, they see Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt who are in their early 60s. That's not what an early 60-year-old looks like. They see guys like Tom Brady and David Beckham in their late 40s. That's not what most of us are going to look like. And so I think we see these sort of funhouse mirrors on our social media feeds, and we start comparing ourselves to it, and we feel less than. So whenever we present people like that across our media, we really try to make sure that people understand that most of all, it's genetic and not realistic, but also the work that goes into that. What type of self-care do they practice? What type of fitness and health routines do they follow? Really making sure they understand that what's realistic and what isn't for them. To Lucy's point, I think Gen Z is really leading the way about this. I think that they really understand that aging is not what it used to be. I think they look up to older people, and by older people I mean people in their 50s and 60s, and see them running Ironman and doing all kinds of extraordinary things with their bodies, and they're inspired. I think one of the things that we as a culture have to do, though, is to manage expectations. You mentioned the DNC. I think, and this might be a controversial belief here, but I don't know if people in their late 70s should be running for president. I don't know that we as a culture have decided whether or not that's something we are ready for. But I think some people believe that they can do anything, right? And aging as a biological reality is not something that they have to contend with. I think we have to manage people's expectations about what actually aging entails and when we should embrace it and when we can accept it and be comfortable with the fact that our bodies and minds maybe can't do what they used to. And that's okay, right? Again, it's a great thing because we get to live another year. But I think the more that we set things up in the media of like looking at these unicorns of aging, people who are doing amazing things in their 70s and 60s, that's great from an inspirational point of view. But I really think we need to manage expectations because otherwise we're just making people feel bad.
Well, I so appreciate your awareness and your recognition that there are these exceptional examples that do provide us new role models. And there's a place for that. And there's a power to that. It can be liberating and it can help us understand the full range of possibilities. But there's a responsibility the media holds in also balancing expectations and putting forward authentic imagery and not shaming and blaming when it doesn't look like Tom Brady. But I'm curious to get your thoughts as you're thinking about your audience. How do you balance that authentic imagery with those exceptional examples?
I think we acknowledge the limits of self-improvement, which is that there are all kinds of things you can do to be the best version of your body and your mind at any given age, but there are limits to it. And when you start messing around with those limits, when you start trying to get around them, you can run into some trouble. There's a famous, he lives out here actually, a guy named Brian Johnson. You probably read about him. He's a bit of a huckster, but he's going to try to live forever, and he takes like 1,000 supplements a day. And I think he looks terrible. That's just me. I don't want to see what his lab results look like. I think they're probably scary. I think there are limits to what we can do to prolong our health span, right? Or our youth span, or however you want to define it. So I think it's really empowering and informing people about the options that they have to kind of prolong and enhance their vitality and their sense of youthfulness and whatever they want to get out of it, visually, performance-wise. But at the same time, reinforcing that there are limits, and that's okay, right? Because again, aging is a biological reality, and it's a whole lot better than the alternative.
Hallelujah. Agreed. Now, at the National Council on Aging, just like others you've heard today, we really believe that unlocking the secret to just better aging policy, better images, better narratives is a recognition that we are all aging. It's not their aging, it's a we're aging. And I'm interested in getting your thoughts, given the editorial role you play, on how we continue to warm the waters for all of us to embrace that we are aging. Aging is living. It's not something you just do in a vacuum.
I think this might go to some degree to what you're saying. One of the things I feel really strongly about as a leader at our company, one of many, is that when this is done right, when you have a lot of people together, at all, levels of accomplishment and, age and responsibility and all those things, I think it's just incredibly important for us to recognize what we can sort of share, borrow, and learn from each other. So for instance, in my role, and I've been in this business a long time, and I'm really at the place in my career where I'm not crazily sort of striving for like, what's the next peak I want to climb, and like, how can I extend, the rest of my time, exponentially, whatever it might be. I'm very, very comfortable in sort of how far I've come and what I'm able to do, because right now I'm in a place of just really wanting to help others, especially the young people in our company. And it's an incredible privilege. It's an enormous amount of fun to work with so many people in their 20s and early 30s who are coming at life and work from a very different place than I am at this point. But it's beautiful. I mean, it really is, because as I say, I learn a lot from them about how we're dealing with our acne scars in the media and things like that. And they're learning a lot from me. And so many young people who come to me with questions that are both granular and existential about sort of how who we are and how we are as professional women and people at Hearst and all the rest. And there is so much joy to be taken in being in a position like that, which you really be very hard to be in that position if you weren't of a certain age and hadn't put in all of those years and decades of of doing the work. And I feel like I guess when I started in the business, it was much more stratified. I mean, I spent many, many years, almost 2 decades at GQ magazine, had a fabulous, fabulous publisher called Michael Clinton, who was sitting over there. And it was very much a world, except for the greats like Michael Clinton, where you did want to hide some stuff. Like you wanted to hide girly stuff, womanly stuff. I needed to be one of the guys if I was going to succeed there. And, it was just something I did. There weren't that many games in town where you could like write for a really great magazine like GQ and learn a lot, and all these incredible mentors and all the rest. And, over these many years that I was there and since, and what's brought me to where I am today, things have changed in our industry. I understand maybe not so much in others, but in ours, it's really changed. And I feel like, that's going to be the secret sauce in a lot of ways at some of our big institutions that are trying to create meaningful change. It's really, generations borrowing from each other, learning from each other, respecting each other. I respect so much that journey of a 26-year-old woman who's in my office just trying to figure out the next move. And I think she respects that I've made all those moves, and maybe she can learn a little something from me. And it's a great thing.
It's beautiful. It is a wonderful thing. And Madeline, your thoughts on how we make aging more of a we versus them issue?
Well, for us, we're strategic consultants. We work behind the scenes in global media and entertainment. You'll never see our logo on a box of Cheerios. And so we provide tools, research tools, so that our partners can make better business decisions. And one of the ways we do that, we have one tool called Spell Check for Bias, which works on scripts. And it looks at, our 6 identities, and we clearly point out opportunities, for casting, because a lot of times different people read scripts for different reasons, but we strictly look at it in terms of who is speaking, how are they showing up, what are they saying? And it's been very, very impactful. So we can flag and say, hey, this character, Becky, there's 6 characters that we don't know what their age is. They could be a woman of color, they could be disabled, they could be LGBTQIA, they could be older. And if we do see things, we just flag it. And then we give them the backup of the literature, because we're not in the room when they have these conversations. And data diffuses emotion, especially when a lot of these conversations can be sensitive. And so we give them the backup, like, this is why we said X, Y, and Z. It's not just our opinion. And that's one way that we're helping. So it's just being in service of the people who are leading, who are developing, who are producing, and helping them so that they can recognize a lot of this unconscious bias, which we all have.
It can be so unintentional, and the subtle tweaks in the language to bring it closer to us and to own it that we are aging, it goes a long, long way. So those are great tools and resources. Richard, your thoughts on how we make the issue more of a we versus them? And then I'd love to open it up to the audience or any online questions we may have.
I mean, I think we just talk about it. And we take a note from the great Gayle King, and maybe it's from our own personal experience or just what we feed into our platforms. The number of stories that we do on andropause, on ED, on all these things that, like, you would never have talked about this 10 years ago. And if you did, it was so embarrassing. And yet, like, it's really not, right? Like, it's a part of aging. Same thing over at Women's Health. We're doing a lot on perimenopause, which, again, I work with a lot of really, really smart female health editors who are like, we didn't know that perimenopause was a thing. Like, no one talked about it until like 10 or 15 years ago. So just, going really, really hard on normalizing it and making sure that we're using accessible, approachable language, and making sure that, like, we're taking the shame out of it. Because again, human bodies are gross, right? I mean, they're weird, they're complicated, like, things go wrong all the time. It's okay. We all have human bodies. We're all really lucky that we do. And the more that we can talk about things like stretch marks or, man boobs is a big one for guys. The more that we can normalize it and the more that we make people feel okay about it.
I think we could also have the fun of the glamorous stuff, which in our world tends to be covers. So for instance, on Elle magazine, they had Demi Moore and Tilda Swinton and all the great sort of prominent women from this crop of movies. On one of our most glamorous brands, Harper's Bazaar, we had Patti Smith at the age of 74. And of course, any cover of anything we do at Oprah Daily has Oprah on it, and she's in her 70s. We just celebrated Gayle King's 70th birthday at a wild party in New York. And on Esquire, I mean, we just had Denzel Washington at the age of 71. We had Robert Downey Jr. at the age of 60. And it wasn't about, like, let's listen to the old codger and have a funny story about what, Hollywood used to be like. I mean, these are national treasures. And, to hear their stories, and a lot of times, you need to have some years on you to have some really incredible stories and to have that kind of experience. Like, think about Al Pacino's memoir, which is sort of a mixed bag, but there were some great stories in there. And, you're not going to get those kind of stories from a, 36-year-old actor, even though I'd, love to hear about those as well. So there are ways that, along with the stretch marks and the man boobs, we can also do some really fun and glamorous and awesome things with our brands, with women and men of all ages.
The shift is underway, the paradigm shift, and having leadership in your roles that has an appreciation for it is really helping us advance, so we can all own that we are all aging. But questions from the audience for these incredible folks leading the charge, please.
We have a question from an online participant, Anne, who's asking, what is your opinion of the movie Thelma? She believes that
Thelma.
June Squibb did a great job of playing a 90-something-year-old woman and is expressing all the facets of being an older woman.
Yeah.
Do you think there's more Thelma-like movies or series being produced? Do you see that in the future?
Great. Who wants to jump
We
in?
would hope so, because what's great about Thelma is that she takes control of her destiny and keeps
Yes.
control of her destiny. And that is one of the tropes and stereotypes that we see over and over again, where it's that damsel in distress type of thing. She needs to be saved. Thelma saved herself. She didn't need anybody to save her.
And she's not the joke. We're the joke,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
we're the ones who are the ones that we're laughing at, not her.
Exactly.
Thoughts on Thelma?
No, I agree. I mean, it was such a fresh and beautiful surprise, and she was completely amazing.
It's
Um,
nap time.
I know. And I just think, a movie like that is just not the outlier that it used to be, I mean, it's, takes some time, but like, it's, I think there's a lot of appetite for that kind of fresh surprise about, who deserves to be in the spotlight on on the big screen.
Authentic narrative, great intergenerational relationships. If you haven't seen it, you've got to check it out. Great, great movie. Any other questions online? And then we've got some in person too.
And none online right now.
All right, let's move to in the room, please.
Hi, Stephanie Odell, Celebrate the Gray Agency. And we are a mission-driven agency that are looking to change the visuals and narratives around aging for the 50+ women. And we represent models, influencers, and content creators. So my question about authentic visuals is AI. And AI using existing visuals to create new visuals, and they're out of date. So what do we do, or what is your thought around perpetuating outdated imagery with new imagery created by AI?
It's a bad thing. I think we have to be super careful about that. We're hard at work on figuring out our AI policy now. But a very sort of sensitive and hot area is, how pictures and images are dealt with. I mean, I don't think it's something that can be swept under the rug with a disclaimer or disclosure. I mean, I think we have to have a really ethical stance on on what we're not willing to do. And, we wouldn't be worth our salt, even remotely as a media company if we were going to be, tinkering with images to make people look. I mean, that would be very sort of, I don't know, 1982 kind of stuff. I mean, I was thinking earlier when I was thinking about the example of the covers that we've had that I just mentioned. And I started my career at Vogue magazine, and that was before they even had actresses on the cover. It was all models, and it was unimaginable that somebody not skinny, not under 25, not beautiful, nobody was going to be on that cover that didn't look like that. And we're in a different world now, thank God. But you're absolutely right. There's an enormous threat posed by AI in this area, and we're just going to have some really ironclad guardrails around it.
Anyone else want to respond to that one?
Well, from a Hollywood point of view, it's about copyright protection. And you represent talent. Well, clearly you want to make sure that someone's not having, generative AI based on somebody else's. And how do you track that? And how do you measure that? And how do you police it? So there's just a ton of work to be done.
Great. Any more questions from the audience, please?
Hello, my name is Susie Stadler. I run a nonprofit called At Home with Growing Older. And I feel like I want to come back to the question you asked, how to make aging more we. And I think what's one avenue would be to talk more about our parents who are probably in their 80s and 90s and make this part of the conversation, this stage of life. And also ask the people here who are in their 80s and 90s to talk about themselves, because I think it's a pretty low bar to have somebody showcase somebody in their 50s, 60s, and 70s But what's really the challenge is the 80s and 90s, where aging is a lot of work and not that much fun anymore. But we all have the experience within our families and friends. So that's, I would love to hear more about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thoughts you want to share on that storytelling element, making it easier for people to share their stories, especially across the generations?
Well, it's interesting. I recently moderated a panel that featured the head of the sort of health and wellness venue at CES, which is this gigantic tech show in Vegas where they have all the latest products. And he said one of the hottest things in technology today is stay-at-home technology, things that allow people to stay in their homes as they get older. And there's a huge market for it, obviously. But he said until recently, no one wanted to talk about it because it was a bummer. So I think the fact that the rubber is hitting the road and that more of these products and these innovations are hitting the market is a reflection of the fact that people aren't just going to swallow it anymore. They are open to telling their stories. They are desperate to see their stories reflected. And they're looking to consumer products and to consumer product manufacturers to help them solve their problems. So I think it's really just letting people's personal lives and their experiences drive that change. Because, you know, as we've said a million times today, we're only going in one direction here as a society, and that's older. So we're all going to have to catch up and get on board.
Fabulous. Well, with our remaining time, I'd love to hear from each of you in terms of projects you have underway or projects on the horizon that'll help keep us advancing this new narrative on aging. Lucy.
Well, that was actually sort of what I said before about the covers that I'm so proud of. You know, we have our focus really trained on that. There isn't, you know, we don't need to resort to cover cliches anymore, particularly. You know, there are all sorts of ways to attract attention to the, you know, media that we're making and to be telling broader, better stories. And, you know, again, and I commend Rich so much with his two brands. I mean, it is such a model of diversity, all the diversity you can think of, both of those brands. And, you know, you can, you know, and I read and look at and, you know, pour over his brands all the time. And you can feel the effect that it's having, the normalizing, the normal, and, you know, and for that to happen at, you know, like for instance, Men's Health, which Rich has run for a longer time, you know, to be able to sort of change the narrative on something like that and have it not just be about like insanely ripped bodies, just page after page, and
Only
you know,
some pages. Just...
yeah, I mean, there's definitely still some of that, but I mean, there's so much more, and I'm not even going to call it stealth. I think Rich just really powerfully moves into that space with, you know, every time they go out with content, and you know, that's the gig. That's what we all have to do. You know, it can't be first show. It can't be sort of tossing a bone to some demo. It's got to be real. Like, we've got to care about all of it. And I feel really, really proud of how we do that at Hearst.
That's great. And I hope you see the rewards of it, because it resonates when people see and feel that you get them. But Madeline.
So for us, a few years ago, we got into gaming, and really it's so immersive. Billions of people are gaming. People don't recognize that, you know, people 50 plus are huge gamers. And so we built a platform called gdiplaybook.org, which is for in service of game developers and game publishers, that has every bit of research we could ever find on portrayals, narrative, looking at different identities, 50 plus, et cetera. Literally, it's like 30 years of every research, plus we have case histories. And it's something that we're hoping can be an intervention as the gaming community looks to hopefully broaden their games and their characters, even non-playable characters. There's just a lot of opportunities. So that vertical has been really important to us. And then we're this close to getting the funding on a massive study that would look at portrayals of menstruation all the way through to menopause, which has never been done before. And when you think about, you know, discrimination, you know, like, don't have a female president because she's going to press a button because she's in menopause. I mean, just the memes and the jokes and just the unbelievable discrimination. And as we were talking about the shame factor, you know, of menopause, and you were talking about Gail. So we're hoping that we're this close that we'll have that. And we think those will be two really great landmark studies.
That's wonderful. And I just make a pitch for women's sexual health, reproductive health, even continues post-menopause. We want to be healthy and active as well, but that's incredible work and so important. So thank you. Richard.
We have a few things. At Women's Health, we have a sort of huge cross-platform service package, narrative package around perimenopause, which again is something that in particular a lot of women in their 40s are talking about and learning about. And so we're really going to meet them where they are in a fun and interesting way. And that will launch later this year. At Men's Health, we actually, I'm reviewing pages now. We're closing an issue. It's called Fit at Any Age. We do it every year. And it's just, again, this idea that we age all throughout our lives, and there are ways that we can do it better. And this year, our theme is the idea, we take the idea of health span and we break it down, that there are actually 7 different parts of health span that we can think about and that we can concentrate on. And then we use different stories and packages to bring those home. So there's strength span, there's breath span, there's sex span. Older people have sex. I don't know if you guys knew that. But really looking at the different types, because I think if you say health span to most people, it kind of goes right over their head. We get specific and we meet them where they are in their different areas of their life. And we really help them understand how to do the whole aging thing just a little bit better.
Fantastic. We have some incredible champions in reframing aging, reframing the narrative, the images of aging for all of us. And it's just so critical because the role of modern media really is shaping all of our attitudes on aging, and that's translating to the policies, the practices, the products. The only way we're truly going to address and invest in aging well for all is if we all embrace that we are all aging and we need to make those investments. Yes, put the dollars where they need to be. But thank you all for your fabulous leadership, for sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure.